Hello. Back for another tale, I see. Well, you're quite fortunate, as today I have an exceptionally interesting one to tell. But you might want to prepare yourself, as this story can be bracing. There are countless tales of individuals who fight against destiny. Tales of good people and bad people, and everything in between. Even tales of normal people trying to live their lives, never experiencing anything outside of the ordinary. This is not one of those tales. Today, you will hear of an individual, one who might seem quite familiar to you. His tale is one of sorrow and despair, of suffering and agony, more so than most could ever bear. And yet, despite all of the factors that stood against him, this individual sought to stand against the endless tide, did not bow when the higher forces came to call, ever pressing onward through that sea of blood and anguish known as his life, so much so that even the mightiest forces that exist do not stop him from the pursuit of his overall goals, his ambition, his desire. However, truthfully, his story begins in a place that one would never expect someone who has completed such monumental tasks to ever begin. Our tale begins on Earth. The date, 1877. The location, the bustling streets of London, where countless individuals roam the streets. Some walking, trudging their way through the dirty city streets. Others ride comfortably in carriages, staying clean and proper, kept safe from the mud and the grime outside, coated in a layer of comfort and protection, riding on comfortable seats, while all others must trudge. And then there is the focal point of our story, slouched on the side of the street, his hand extended, at this point by reflex, in worn, filthy, tattered clothing truly not fit to be worn at all, and yet it is all he has, as he sits slumped in the muck, wallowing in his grief and despair, as someone passing by places a few small coins into his hand. As he looks up at them in his grasp, the individuals passing, their only acknowledgement of him being acknowledging that he probably needs the money more than they do, and simply moving on with their lives. And their belief is quite true, as the man pulls himself from his stupor out of the muck and grime and begins to make his way down the street. The small amount of change he was given, enough, only barely, but just enough. He stops at a nearby bakery, the smell of fresh bread. It's been some time since he's been able to eat. As he walks up, the woman selling the bread tries to shoot him before he extends his hand, showing the money in his grasp. Afterwards, she begrudgingly accepts the token of money offered to her, handing him in exchange a loaf of warm, freshly baked bread. As the man clutches the bread to his chest, quickly making haste away from the location, looking over each shoulder as he passes into an alleyway, pressing his back into the stone wall as he begins to eat the bread, his gnarled, damaged teeth tearing into it voraciously, eating so quickly that it's hard to actually stop to breathe, looking down at the half-eaten loaf of bread in his grasp, finally feeling some sort of substance within his stomach. The individual stares down at it in disgust. Is this all I really am? All that's meant to be of me? Scrounging on the streets, starving. No family, no name, no purpose. Is this truly all I can manage? It's pathetic. Why? Why did this have to be my life? The man says to himself, one hand reaching up and clasping his head as he stares through his fingers down at the half-eaten loaf of bread. It's all his fault. That bastard father of mine's. He took everything and left me with nothing. Even now, I still remember the feeling of his blood on my hands. My mother's lifeless body lying there in the room. The victim of his rage. The good-for-nothing drunken moron. Unfit to be a husband or father. So many years she protected me from him. Every time he came home, reeking of strong drink of every sort, on which he spent nearly every dime he had, wondering why he never had any money to spend, furious about the state of his life, taking it out on my poor mother, until the day that he went too far. He killed her, seeing what he'd done, rather than feel remorse, shame, or any of that nonsense. He looked over to me and saw only a witness, and sought to claim my life as well. And instead, blade in hand, I took his, leaving me standing there in that hovel, all alone, stained with my father's blood, my mother's body just lying there. Just as the neighbor came by for a visit, seeing only 2 dead bodies and a mad, murderous little child, she would hear no reason. She simply fled in fear, and from that moment on, I was marked. I could no longer claim innocence, despite the fact that I was only protecting myself from the man who killed my mother. I was marked as a murderer, blamed for both my father's death and my mother's as well. I was lucky to have made it out of the town at all. Looking back on it now, I can only think that in truth, it would have been luckier if I would have just died right then and there. The man spoke to himself, still staring down at that piece of bread in his grasp, his fingers clenching into it, crushing down on its form, the flaky exterior breaking, some of it crumbling away, small crumbs floating to the ground beneath him, as he stood in the muck of that dirty alleyway. Is this really it? Is this how my life is meant to be? Simply the lot I am given. Well, I suppose you could always change that, now couldn't you? The man heard a voice emit from nearby as he looked over to see a well-dressed gentleman wearing a suit, very finely fitted, a clean white, a lovely cane and top hat, flawless shoes, simply standing there in the muck with him. He didn't hear him approach, not a whisper, not the sound of a footstep. It was as if he just appeared there. Who are you? What do you want? Oh, you mustn't be so suspicious. After all, I'm here to help. Think of me as a friend. My name is Beaufort. Beaufort Kriller. It's lovely to meet you. And with you, I'd like to do a bit of business. I see your life is in a tragic state of situation. And I am a man of influence. And as such, I would like to levy some of my influence, some of my resources to help a fellow soul in need. That's all. I simply want to cut a deal. A deal? You must be joking. Does it look like I have anything to offer you? What? You want my half? A loaf of bread? My tattered clothes? I'd offer my shoes, but I don't have any, the man said, angrily disgruntled, as he stared at the man, believing him to only be mocking him. Oh no, you seem to have gotten the wrong idea. You see, monetary compensation is not the kind that I'm looking for. There are many things that hold value, and whether you believe it or not, even the poorest of men possess things that can be considered priceless. So, the man said, placing his cane on his wrist as he extended a hand outward, placing it on the gentleman's shoulder. Perhaps a more private setting for our meeting, the man said with a friendly, inviting smile as he snapped his fingers, and in a flash of red light, they found themselves elsewhere, a clean, tidy room. No longer outside in the streets of London, they appeared to be in a dining room, one fit for a king. Only the upper echelons could possibly afford such a lavish kitchen and dining room. Have a seat, the man said as he stepped away. What's going on? Where am I? He said, holding his bread close to his chest, now terrified as he gazed around, unsure of how he could have possibly gotten from the alley to this place. You're in my home, of course. I know it's a bit of a mess, but the maid has the day off. But the cooks are on staff, and I've had them prepare a meal just for you, he said as doors to the room opened, and in walked waitstaff, carrying plates covered with toppers as they placed a meal for two down on the table, removing the ceiling lids to show a lavish meal, more than he had eaten in days, weeks. Finely prepared chicken, roast ham, fresh wine, a meal like he had never seen in his entire life, even before he lived on the streets. I don't have any money. I can't afford that food. Think nothing of it. The meal is free. You needn't pay a dime. Have a seat, my friend. Surely you must be hungry, he said, as he gestured towards the seat and the table filled with food. Though he had many questions about the situation, in the present state and time, none of them seemed important. He quickly sat down, not bothering with the silverware, simply using his hands to begin tearing into the food, eating with vigor, intent. He had never tasted anything this good in his entire life. And yet, he was terrified that if he did not eat quickly, that like a dream he would soon wake from it. No more sustenance before him. And so, though he ate quickly, he tried his best to relish every bite. Ah, I see you're enjoying your meal. That's good. It was in fact the purpose for which I had it prepared in the first place. I do hope you like it, Mr. Beaufort said, as he smiled kindly, allowing him to eat his fill, as he finally grew too full to eat any more, breathing heavily as he looked across the table to Mr. Beaufort, one leg crossed over the other, his hands calmly in his lap, as he smiled peacefully in his direction. What is it? What is it that you think that I can offer you? He said, bits of food still on his mouth and hands, grease coating his fingers. Well, as I said, simply being homeless doesn't mean that you have nothing of value. there are a great many things of value that you might possess, for which I could change this terrible fate that is befalling you. But understand, there is a cost to everything. I may have the power to change your fate, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to do it for free. You'll have to pay the toll. And what is it? What's the price to change my fate? What is it that you think I can offer you? He exclaimed, staring at the man, hoping that whatever he said, it would be something that he could actually offer. Well, let me see here. You could offer me a great many things. For example, you could offer me years of your life. What? What do you mean, years of my life? You mean I'd have to work for you? Be one of your servants? Oh, no, nothing so ridiculous as that. I have money to pay those. I refer to actual years. You see, everybody is born with somewhat of an expiration date, a period of time in which your life is scheduled to have run its course. There's always room for shifts of fate, sudden death by accidents, murders, and alike. However, the date that your body is scheduled to, well, no longer be optionally functional, that never changes. So honestly, even if you did barter away years of your life, there's no guarantee that you'd ever see those years through. You might just as well be run over before then. You never really know. Besides, what's a few decades if you can live a lavish, comfortable life? I could give that to you. Give you more than enough money so that you'd never have to work again, in exchange for the right number of years. And that's only one of the many things that I can offer. I think you'll find that my power stretches far beyond that. I could introduce you to a world of things beyond your imagination. Make nearly any wish that your heart may have come to be. As I said before, so long as the price is right. And you may trade anything that you possess, anything that might be valuable. And you would be surprised what's valuable. For example, did you know that if you can sing, there are people who would pay a great sum for that skill? What? Yes. I know it seems like a simple, trifling thing. The ability to sing. The more of it you have, the more valuable it is. If you stack enough of it on top of each other and sell it all at once, you could give someone the voice of an angel, able to sing such beautiful songs that it would entrance the hearts of anyone who heard it. And all talents and skills are likewise valuable. A talent or a natural ability is normally something that one has to have themselves, but my particular skill set allows me to bypass this, so I can give people anything that they truly desire, whether it be talent or skill, the love of a beautiful woman, wealth, power, influence, whatever your heart desires, really. The only question being what you're willing to trade for it. You may ask whatever you wish, and I may demand in exchange for that whatever I think is fair. So, what do you think? Can we make a bargain? Mr. Beaufort said, still smiling brightly in his direction, as he felt the full stomach packed with food that the man had prepared. Thinking back on the events of his life, the tragic circumstance he finds himself in, and now an opportunity to change that fate, to rewrite his destiny. Could he really do it? Were the only thoughts that truly crossed his mind. And if he can change the strings of my fate, what will it cost me? Oh, I have one. This one's what you might call an extra special deal. It basically won't cost you anything at all. You can keep everything and get your wish on top of it. What? But you said I have to exchange something. Well, yes, you of course have to exchange something. However, what you exchange isn't something that you're ever going to have to pay for. Well, at least within your lifetime. What do you mean? Well, the idea that comes to mind is that of salvation and damnation. You see, as I said, I have a very interesting skill set, and there are a great many people on this planet who are ever so frightful of the world beyond, that lies beyond life and death. Oh, whatever will become of me when I die? Will I go to heaven, or perhaps hell? I haven't the foggiest. Or perhaps they do. It's rather amusing when you think of it. So, this deal would specifically be one that would, well, unfortunately, damn you to hell. I suggest that you allow me to use you as a repository for sin and punishment. What? It's simply one option that you could choose if you saw fit. Basically, there are sort of grand scales to things. When it comes to the things that you do to other people, everything is marked and charted. Every life you've ever taken, every time you've ever lied, every sin you've ever committed, it's all charted. Effectively, what I'd ask is for me to shift the scales. Basically, your chart would take on the sins of others, allowing their universal record, so to speak, to reflect that they are innocent and therefore cannot be sent to any unpleasant places once they cross into the world beyond. However, this would mean that your chart would reflect, well, a horrendous person, truly. You would be damned to hell for all eternity. That is, only after you die, of course. You'd still get to live the rest of your life enjoying whatever it is that you bartered from me. Be it wealth, power, talent, beautiful women, you get to enjoy it all, so long as you're alive. So, with that on the table, perhaps you have some bright ideas, maybe some things that you want, some things you're willing to trade. Don't worry, there's no rush. Take your time, Mr. Beaufort said, smiling gracefully as always, his calm exterior never breaking, as the dirty, disheveled man stared down at the empty plates before him, wondering about all the ways he could change his fate. And who was this man, Mr. Beaufort, claiming that he could do it all for years of life in exchange for accepting the sins of others for his talents or skills? What would he pay to change his life? He thought, as his eyes gazed up at the man sitting across from him at the table. And this is where it all begins, the tale of the man who would one day be called the devil himself, the dealer, and a god among men.